Wendy Snyder in for Bob Sirott this morning. I always look forward to filling in for Bob so I can check in with Joseph Lindsley, who's live in Ukraine right now. Good morning to you, Joseph.
Wendy, good morning. Great to speak with you again. And hello from a beautiful summer day here in Lviv. We did have some drama this morning throughout the country. The Russians were attacking. We had nationwide alarms a little bit after 10 o'clock this morning. And there were reports of those Kinzhal, the supersonic missiles, which are extremely difficult to shoot down. In fact, it seems that only the Patriot missile batteries from the United States are capable of stopping those Russian Kinzhal missiles. In Kyiv, the capital of Ukraine, the air defense did work, but because some of the debris, of course, as always, can still fall on the city. And we have reports that among other civilian buildings, a children's hospital was hit in Kyiv, but it does not seem that it was a direct strike. We still don't have details on if there are any injuries or fatalities. But in the city of Ivano-Frankivsk, which is here in western Ukraine, and sort of right at the edge of the Carpathian Mountains, a civilian building was hit by a Russian missile, and there were a number of injuries, and at least one child was killed during that attack this morning. Meanwhile, a few hours later, there was an explosion in Moscow. We're starting to see this with a little bit more frequency, but there were reports of a drone attack somewhere near, not in the center of the city, but there was video you could see of people on the river in Moscow kayaking in their peaceful city because the war is in Ukraine and not in Russia.
Right.
And you could see a drone explosion. Perhaps that was a Ukrainian effort. Just mere hours after the Russians attacked several cities throughout Ukraine.
Wow. And you have some audio for us as well this morning, Joseph.
Yeah, I wanted to share this with you. It's another, sometimes we have audio that's very hard to hear, or hard to hear emotionally.
Yeah.
And this is from the city of Zaporizhzhia. Zaporizhzhia is that's in the ancient heartland of the Cossack people. Where that city now is, it used to be on the rapids. The name means beyond the rapids. And there were rapids there until the Soviets built a dam there in the 1930s, flooding the most sacred lands of the Cossack people, the lands where they really began to establish democracy many centuries ago. That city has never been occupied in this big war, but it's not so far from the front lines. And several days ago, there was, even when there are air alarms, even in cities they get hit pretty often, people are still living their lives. And there were two girls, young girls, like probably late teens, Svitlana and Khrystina, and they were performing. They were singing songs with their guitars outside of a shopping mall in the city of Zaporizhzhia. And what we're going to listen to is, some passerby filmed them singing, and within an hour they were killed by Russian rockets that hit their city. So as you hear these girls singing, this was the last moments of their lives with such joy, despite the threats that are surrounding them. And all of that was to be erased within an hour when they were killed immediately by the rockets that fell near a supermarket in the city of Zaporizhzhia.
То капець, як ми пасували, всі дивилися нас і обвівали.
All right, that's beautiful. And that was their final song.
Yeah, some of the final words they said on this earth, Svitlana and Khrystina. And, if you see the video, it's a beautiful day there in Zaporizhzhia, and they were, boosting people's spirits, singing a song in the Ukrainian language. And within an hour, those voices were extinguished, thanks, because of a Russian attack on their city. And so you see, you have the warriors in the trenches, but then you have a different type of warrior, these young girls, Svitlana and Khrystina, in their city, singing against the death and destruction that the Russians are raining down upon Ukraine every day. And, when there was the explosion in Moscow this morning, Russia immediately tweets out, "Oh, a terrorist attack on Russia." They keep trying to play the innocent, and I think for many people that obviously seems ridiculous. But as I mentioned yesterday, we had this conference here in Lviv, sponsored by the Silicon Curtain podcast from the UK and a Ukrainian blogger named Ores Zub. And the big topic of conversation is that Russia just kind of keeps confidently not only pounding Ukraine, but pounding away with its propaganda. And it does have an effect on people. And one of the biggest things is, people become either tired of this and they stop paying attention, or they become afraid and, afraid of the continued threats. And, the nuclear question is often mentioned. And on the one panel on which I spoke, I was joined by a woman named Olena Halushka. She's co-founder of the International Center for Ukrainian Victory. And she said, a lot of people in the West worry, what happens if, the Russian Federation breaks up? And people are worried about what would happen to Russia's nuclear weapons. And she said, we have to already realize, Russia moved some of their nuclear warheads to Belarus, which is not a nuclear country. It's not part of any nuclear treaty. And they have a renegade regime. Already, and from the very first moments of this war, February 24th, Russians have been reckless. And so we have to realize that, that the Russians are doing everything they can already with the resources they have to win this war. And so that's what the question for the West is, will we be afraid or will we have courage like those two girls in Zaporizhzhia? And it can be dangerous, but the only way to face this threat is with courage. And I think, I think of all the people that were at that conference yesterday. There were great Ukrainian artists who used their talents to raise money to buy drones for the Azov regiment and other parts of the military. There were volunteers from all over the world. There was a guy from the Netherlands who came here to help because he was reading, the news on Twitter. And he said, his grandfather, when his grandfather was 19 years old in the Netherlands, he refused to work with the Nazis. And as a result, he was imprisoned. And he said his grandfather never could tell him all these stories, but he told him enough. And so the guy from the Netherlands said, who goes by just a Dutch guy on Twitter, where he chronicles his Ukraine stories. He said, my family, never lost the memory of the evil that we faced in Europe during World War II. And so that's why he said, I felt the urge to come to Ukraine and to stand against this. And so we were surrounded by so much of that yesterday. And the big challenge is, to get people, in the West, not to forget this, to remember that this is happening, but also to remember that victory is possible. And if you look at, how well Ukrainians have held on with the support of the West. And someone asked, the last question we had on this panel yesterday was, how do we define victory for Ukraine? And, of course, it includes things like getting Crimea back and making sure Russia can no longer be this kind of threat to the world. But as I thought about it, I think the real sense of victory would mean a change in the mindset of people in Western democracies that we really believe, like the Ukrainians believe, that individual people can have agency, that we don't have to live sort of controlled by the elites and always be worried about, struggling by to get through life, which is a problem, with the cost of living, whether you're in Canada or the U.S. or the U.K., and that we really can take control of our democracies as the Ukrainians began to do in 2014. And once people really realize that it's possible to live freely in a true sense, then I think people could see the possibility that Ukraine really could, with the West, defeat this tyranny that comes from Moscow and that throws missiles right now on Ukraine. But once they have the chance, who knows where they will go next?
The courage of Ukrainian people is just phenomenal. I can't even believe it. Thank you for checking in, Joseph. I'm really hoping and praying for a quiet weekend for all of you.
Thanks, Wendy. I'm about to catch a train and travel again, and everyone can follow along at UkrainianFreedomNews.com. And great to talk to you, and I look forward to our conversation on Monday.
Yep, I'll speak to you Monday. I'm on UkrainianFreedomNews.com right now, and wishing you a peaceful weekend.
Thank you for introducing Ukraine on your social media pages. That's very important that much more people can get more information about the situation here and how everybody can help Ukraine to stay stronger and to save all the world.
Що він сказав?
Well, which side are you on?
на чій ти стороні,
Come on now. Oh, which side are you on?
на чій ти стороні.
You can catch it all on WGN.
Moja Sara para nagła, ja i Sara kliowa para roza i cypan. My z tobą, moja Sara para nagła, ja i Sara to właśnie para idealna, para imperfecta, no prosta kapitalna. Jakby mucha to katiec, więc jakby pasowali, всі дивилися